Hello there and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. I am Vlad and today I have a very special guest who doesn't do too many interviews. He did a lot of work in Bitcoin and created a lot of stuff that everyone uses today. But he doesn't get much credit mostly because he's quiet and he keeps on building. His name is Sergio Demian Lerner and he is the Chief Architect of RSK. That's what he does mostly these days. He focuses on creating new ways to use Bitcoin with smart contracts and stuff. And he was also interested in creating something like Bitcoin. That was his research prior to discovering Bitcoin, prior to Bitcoin existing, actually. As far as I know, he started being interested in cybersecurity and cypherpunk ethos after reading the book Applied Cryptography by Bruce Schreier. That's in your blog. I read that before our interview. And you did a lot of cool stuff from basically figuring out how many coins Satoshi had mined, which is called the Satoshi project. And you also helped with stuff that miners use today, like the ASIC boost. And you designed ideas for protocols that you never put into practice, but were used later in other projects like Monero and Ethereum. And you also have a consultancy firm for, not consultancy, but security auditing firm that basically deals with these projects that want to make sure that everything is fine. You do a lot of work. You don't get much credit. This is why we're here. It's really good to have you, Sergio.
Thanks, Vlad, for having me, and super excited for your questions.
So let's start with how you first got involved in Bitcoin, because you don't do too many podcasts. I guess it's not the most exciting question, but the audience is probably curious how you came across it and why you chose to invest so much time and work into it, and why even today you're building on top of Bitcoin.
So a lot of years ago, like it was 2011 or so, I had finished my university, but I had not finished my thesis to graduate from it, because I had my job in cybersecurity. I was fine. I had a company, a medical company with 20 employees doing a lot of interesting neurophysiology equipment for Latin America. So once I decided to finish my thesis, and I chose to do it on mental poker protocols. And these mental poker protocols allows you to play poker online without an intermediate, right? So it's peer-to-peer poker, so you have to take care of all the cryptography. But I also wanted to add new properties, and one of the properties that was not known at the time was something called dropout tolerance, which means that any participant could drop out from the poker game, and the other participants would be able to continue playing without violating the strategy or revealing their cards. So when I finished this thesis, I decided, okay, I'm gonna try to make it use to put it on use. I talked with certain online casinos, and they were not interested in using anything related to peer-to-peer. So I decided, okay, I'm going to put this in the public domain to let anyone play, but I need a coin. Sorry, this was probably 2009, before Satoshi had created Bitcoin. And I was in the forums, in the cyberpunk forums, discussing how to create anonymous peer-to-peer coins, and there was nothing. So, okay, I said, okay, good. This is a project that I put on public domain. I forgot about it. But 2 years later, a friend of mine called me and said, Sergio, do you remember your mental poker framework? Yep. So there is a coin now that you can use to play poker and bet with that. Okay, I said, great. So at that point, I saw the perfect combination of gambling and multi-party computation and a cryptocurrency. But as soon as I started researching about Bitcoin, I realized it had problems, like it didn't support the smart contracts that I needed to run my own mental poker framework on top of Bitcoin. So initially, I realized that I needed to create smart contracts on top of Bitcoin, or try to convince the Bitcoiners that more Turing complete capabilities on the platform would be interesting to have. But I was super excited about Bitcoin, and I remember that I started working part-time on my company, and the other half of the day trying to understand more and more about Bitcoin. I went to this this hole of not doing anything else. And because of my background on cybersecurity, I started studying the security of Bitcoin. And I found my first vulnerability that I reported to the core developers of that time, who were Gavin and Gregory and Maxwell were there, and Luke was there, and it was a very funny vulnerability, because Satoshi had a system to send notifications, kinds of alerts within the Bitcoin network. So if anything happened, like there was a bug or there was a vulnerability, he could tell everyone in the network that was happening. And the node would receive an alert and forward it to as many peers as possible, as fast as possible. So if you power on, boot up a node, the first thing the node would do would be to receive all the alerts and repeat the alerts that were not forwarded to the other nodes. So I found that if you could take one of these alerts and you could malleate the signature, you could create another alert with the same hash. So that was the first signature malleability bug that was found in Bitcoin. So basically, I could replicate alerts and create billions of them. And the simulation, I mean, the explanation, because we never tested on real the network, but the simulation was that every node went down in less than 10 minutes because of the overwhelming number of alerts that I could produce. And no node would be able to come up again, because as soon as a node would be reset, then all the nodes will attack the node and fill its memory with alerts. So it was a devastating vulnerability. Yeah. The whole system is now deprecated. It's not in Bitcoin anymore, because it depended on a single public key, private key of Satoshi, right? And so I connected with the Bitcoin core development, and I started a relationship with them, and eventually I reported more vulnerabilities, like the hashing O-square hashing problem of Bitcoin scripting before SegWit. I found a different signature malleability attack that also was a trigger of SegWit. I found some other efficiency problems in the Bitcoin scripting regarding the nested if and nested else. I found privacy vulnerability. So I was super interested in trying to improve Bitcoin and report the vulnerabilities. But I didn't have Bitcoin. Yeah, really. And my first two conferences that were in Buenos Aires, in EcoParty and in LabitConf, were kind of against Bitcoin. Like I was saying, okay, this is fantastic, but it doesn't scale. It's not private enough for my cypherpunk ethos. Like, it's not private enough. And so we need more layers on top of this. So very early, I was very interested in building on top of Bitcoin, because in the 2015, the block size wars, it became very clear that upgrading or modifying Bitcoin would be much more difficult as time passes, right? So it became very important to build on top of Bitcoin in layers.
Yeah, you did quite a lot over the years. And there are lots of projects of yours that I like, including something that's called Bit Banknotes. I remember, I think that's how I came across your research the first time, because I already knew about this, saying that basically if you watch any YouTuber today, he's going to say, yeah, Satoshi Nakamoto has 1 million coins. And that was your research that became most famous. But how I came across your work was through researching the idea of making cash with Bitcoin, making it private to transfer, making it seamless peer-to-peer. And I found your proposals for Bit Banknotes, and you also mentioned in your research that Gavin Andresen had suggested something similar with paper wallets. And it was an interesting research, and I was actually curious how or why this never became a thing, because it scales Bitcoin on a local level, and it also makes it pretty fungible.
So the research, I wanted to, I live in Argentina, where people are used to cash, and cash has this anonymity kind of property. So I wanted Bitcoin to be as easy for people to use as cash, and without relying on their smartphones or anything. So I wanted to create a card, a microprocessed card that you could just give as if it was a banknote, right? And so the first version of it was called the firm coin. And still, there are a couple of CoinDesk articles about the firm coin, the very early versions of it, that they work very well. And you could redeem that. The most advanced version had a display where you could actually see the amount of Bitcoins that were inside the card. But the problem was that the card cost about $6 to $7 each. And so it was very expensive just to use as a medium for payments, because you had to subtract the cost of the card to make sure that you pay the right amount. So for high denomination, it works, but for lower denomination, it doesn't. But what was very interesting in the research of the firm coin is that this is something that had a lot of implications later. We needed to prove that the firmware of the firm coin was authentic, without having it, because we didn't want it to depend on attestation from a root of trust authority, right? So we needed the firmware in itself to be able to prove to the outside world that it was running a specific version. And that algorithm, that protocol that we designed, was actually the cornerstone of proving that you have a replica of certain information, which lead to a proposal that I made many years ago about proof of blockchain ownership, like proving that you have a copy of the blockchain data, and so you are able to get paid for having that information. And then that was the basis for Filecoin, because the Filecoin obviously has more advanced cryptographic protocols, but the essence is how to prove that you have a replica of certain information, and it's different from other replicas that are in the network. So we used an asymmetric encoding, where encoding was very slow, but decoding was very fast, and you would encode the identity of the device in the firmware, and all the firmware is encrypted with this encoding function. And if you take a look at Filecoin today, there is similar techniques that are being used. So it was super interesting, but the cost was prohibitive. Probably maybe now, if you want to create, let's say, 1 million of them, then you can lower the cost to a few dollars maybe, or less. But in that time, if you wanted to create 100, then it was very costly.
Wasabi Wallet is unfairly private. It's the most advanced, most used Bitcoin privacy wallet, with 500,000 downloads across Windows, macOS and Linux, as well as thousands of fresh and new Bitcoins get mixed every month. Wasabi makes use of the new generation Wabi-Sabi engine to create mega conjoins, thus mixing your Bitcoins with those of hundreds of other users. For amounts lower than 0.01 BTC and remixes, you pay no coordination fee. If you don't use your conjoins, Wasabi Wallet has a native Tor integration and downloads block filters to help you keep your network level and public key privacy. Download Wasabi Wallet for free today at wasabiwallet.io and experience the future of Bitcoin privacy. Future of Bitcoin privacy. Future of Bitcoin. Future of Bitcoin. Future of Bitcoin. Future of Bitcoin privacy.
Before I move on to the next question, I just want to say that I forgot to say that we are in La Crypta, which is Augustin's house, and he was kind enough to let us use it for this interview. And I must also thank CryptoSteel and Wasabi Wallet for paying for my trip to come here to Argentina and being able to do this interview. And speaking of Wasabi Wallet, you were, Sergio, one of the first people to do proper and more advanced blockchain analysis with public data that was already available against the backlash that you received on Bitcoin Talk at the time, that you should not be doing this because it's immoral or something. And you proved, or at least you had a very plausible theory that Satoshi Nakamoto might have mined 1 million Bitcoins, but your theory also proved that Satoshi never sold a single Bitcoin. And coincidentally, at the time, the price went up after you published your article. What's the story behind this, and how did you come to that conclusion?
So at that time, I think it was 2013, after 2 years of working in Bitcoin, I didn't own Bitcoin. And I was saying, okay, maybe it's time to buy some, right? So I'm terribly skeptic, like as many cybersecurity guys, they are super scary of anything, so they want to research. So I was wondering, okay, was really fair the distribution? Like, how was it? Like, how many people do have Bitcoin? What amounts? So I did just a very simple, basic analysis. I said, okay, if Satoshi was present during a full year, and if the Satoshi's computer was the one that had mined the first 10 blocks, let's say it's highly probable that Satoshi mined the first few blocks. Maybe some other people joined, but it's something that you can assume, right? And then it was very easy to say that Satoshi had 1 million Bitcoins with just those few elements. But yeah, when I tell this very simple theory on the forums, on Bitcoin Talk forums, then a few people told me, she yelled at me like I was kind of shooting at our God or something, right? Like trying to break our myth or something, right? And I was saying it's not what I want. I just really want to understand better the origins. And so I said, after people just told me not to, I just say, okay, I need to have proof. And I went to the blockchain. I coded a program to analyze, and I found that there was a correlation. I mean, that each block has kind of, let's say, 2 clocks. One is the real-time clock, right, the timestamp, and the other was a free-running clock, which was not meant to be that, but is the extra nonce, which never reset in the early versions of Bitcoin. So now that I have 2 clocks, I can correlate them, and I can find exactly the speed, the slope, right, the relation of these 2 clocks. So I can find the speed that each one of these blocks is being mined. If I can just find, I can connect blocks that have the same slope. So I just put that information in a diagram, and then everything was super clear. Like, I remember that in the article I wrote, an image is worth 1,000 words, which is a Spanish phrase. I don't know if it's an English phrase, but so it was so clear that I stared at it for a lot of time, and I counted the number of blocks that were related to the original genesis, and it was about 1 million of them. So all things match. And I published the article. I had no Bitcoin, I had no intention. I just wanted to make sure that the article was perceived in a very positive way. Well, for me, Satoshi was really like something to worship. Like, I loved the way the paper is written. I loved the code. I was fascinated with it. So I tried to make this as positive as possible for the future generations to read it and understand that if you are going to create Bitcoin, you need to maintain its security in the beginning. There's no way that you can just roll it and forget about it. Because if it is important for you, then you want to keep it safe, at least for the times where it's vulnerable. So I published the article, and I was going to sleep. It was like 2 a.m. in the morning. And I said, I'm going to stay a little bit more longer watching the stats, right? And I had my blog that had like 10 visits a day. And it started to go up and up and up and up until there was tens of thousands of visits. And in 2 days, there was like 30,000 or 35,000 visits to my blog. I think I didn't sleep for the whole night. I just stared at the numbers. I couldn't believe it. And Bitcoin actually went up like 10%. And I was like, I was thinking like 35,000 people. That's every single Bitcoiner in the planet, right? Everyone read the article. And so I was thinking that what I had discovered is that there were 2 things. First, that Satoshi had some Bitcoins, and the other is he had almost spent nothing. Over the years, with the ups and downs, he could have dumped half of it or any amount of it in the peaks, but he didn't. So that it's a very strong signal that he was committed to the project. And then after that, people that helped me and different research I did afterwards, we found like 5 different ways of identifying the same Satoshi pattern with different things, right? The fact that Satoshi turned off his mining machines for 5 minutes after he mined a block, just to make sure that the other had the opportunity to mine blocks. For instance, that's a thing that you can easily check with the Satoshi blocks. And the nonce, the fact that the nonce is mined on a reduced range, it doesn't scan the full 32 bits. Like there is some intervals on it, and there are certain intervals that are scanned and certain intervals that are not scanned. So you can very easily see which are. So there are almost 5 different ways. Also, I found that Satoshi, this is very interesting research that I did many years later, that Satoshi didn't count, like didn't increment the nonce as the other miners, like from 0 to the top, like he did it in reverse. And for that, I had to remine every single one of the Satoshi blocks to make sure that was like, it's very interesting. Like what I try to find, if let's say that I'm Satoshi, right? And I want to see if the same block template had a different solution in a lower nonce or in a higher nonce. So if I scan from the lower nonce to the higher and I bump into a solution of a block before I reach Satoshi's solution, that means that he was not scanning from low to high. He reached his solution from the highest nonce to the lowest nonce. And I found in every single of Satoshi blocks that there were many ones that had solution in the lower part, but not over the solution that Satoshi found. So that is a very simple explanation why the blocks are mined by a different type of hardware. So now there are many ways to distinguish. And the question is why? Why there are so many ways to distinguish Satoshi blocks? And my answer, I'm almost sure that he wanted us to know that those were his blocks. And so everyone knows now that there are a million blocks that probably nobody's going to touch, nobody's going to sell, and they are there forever. Yeah, Coinbase blocks, yes. So there are Coinbases that have never been spent and probably never will.
Yeah, I think the argument that I read to combat your theory is that Satoshi had a line of C++ code which did not allow Bitcoin as a network to launch until there were at least two nodes mining at the same time. And also there were a few people on the Bitcoin Talk forum claiming that they were there mining at the same time. But what you just told me, that Satoshi basically was mining in reverse in the way that he was counting down to the hash, means that he tried to disadvantage himself compared to the rest of the network?
No, it's the same. If you scan from low to top or top to bottom, it's the same space you are scanning, just in different order. But let me tell you about the what you said first. Yeah, so it's very interesting that Bitcoin nodes at that time, they would increment the extra nonce every time a block was received, because the inner loop, the mining loop, would break, right? And then would get in again with a different block template. While Satoshi did not do that. So everything you find about the client, the 0.1 client, it's highly probable that Satoshi code was different. So those theories do not work, because we have proof that it's not the same loop, it's scanned differently, and also it doesn't interrupt when a block is coming. So it was a kind of system that was disconnected from the outside. Maybe it was just kind of one direction, like somehow the new last days block arrived, but it was not really, I don't know. This is just, I'm guessing, right? But it was very different from the code that was published.
Yeah, it's certainly a very interesting research. And the way that I think about Satoshi's coins these days is that they're a bounty to prove that the cryptography works. Because if you can brute force a private key, which means that you determine the private key from the public key, then it means that your coins are not safe. But if these coins, which are out there in the wild and are visible and well known, are secure, it means that your coins are also secure.
Yeah, the original Coinbases are paid to public key hash, so this is kind of a bounty against discrete log, the breaking the discrete log problem. I think it would be very interesting if we see something changing on those Coinbases. It would mean that probably that we need to move to something quantum safe, right?
Yeah, we get a lot of advertisement for these super powerful quantum computers, but if they were really that capable, they should at least break one wallet and prove that they work, but they don't. And I think that these claims are usually fundraisers, attempts for researchers to get funds from investors with the promise that they will be able to deliver that. But even in that case, I think Peter Todd told me that it's easy to calculate qubits, but it's harder to put them into practice for a certain application.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that there's going to be an improvement, but it's not going to be like from one day to another. And the Bitcoiners have already thought about techniques to migrate before this happens. Like if the cryptography is not broken, you still can implement new cryptographic schemes like Merkle Winternitz or one of the latest standardized signature schemes, quantum resistance, and move the funds. Obviously, if someone never moves the funds, those funds will be in a problem. And I wonder what should we do with Satoshi addresses in that case. If we reach the point where quantum computers are problematic, then I think it's a good question. What should we do? Should we kind of block all of them or let anyone take them? It's kind of interesting.
CryptoSteel offers a durable, physical backup for cryptocurrency key and recovery words. These user-friendly cold storage devices withstand harsh conditions, including fires, floods, and earthquakes. Made from the finest European stainless steel, they are built to last. Accessible to all and requiring no computer skills, the original CryptoSteel cassette and capsule have been innovating Bitcoin security since 2013. They provide a reliable and robust backup, essential for the safety and longevity of your digital investments. Ideal for protecting your digital wealth. CryptoSteel isn't just a one-trick pony. Of course, it works with your Beep39 seed phrase, but you can also use it for important passwords, Bitcoin core passphrases, Nostr private keys, and much more. Buy your CryptoSteel metal backup today from cryptosteel.com and use promo code BTCTKVR to get a 10% discount. CryptoSteel, secure your Bitcoin like an OG.
Yeah, it certainly is, but I think a good way to preserve Bitcoin if we move to a different type of cryptography is to also ensure that whoever the creator was, if he was able to return, unless he's dead or something, is able to use the coins. I think also the fact that the coins are there is a challenge for us to respect private property and the degree to which we can do that. Because I've heard many people want to integrate some way of redistributing these coins. And ideas float around. I think the biggest bet that Satoshi made was that this halving cycles would be sustainable for the network and that the fees would be able to make up for the diminishing Coinbase reward. And I think that's the biggest uncertainty in Bitcoin right now, because we know we can make it happen, but we don't know how. I mean, we do have proposals, as in there are big blockers, there are people who like sidechains that are merge mined, there are people who think that we're going to pay high fees no matter what. We have lots of approaches, and there's also Peter Todd who wants tail emission. But I think that's the least likely of them all. No, the least likely is to create arbitrary inflation and whatever. But it's good that we think about these problems in advance. And speaking of thinking about problems in advance, let's also talk about Rootstock, because I think that you're building really cool stuff. It's smart contracting technology that has interoperability with Ethereum, as far as I know. It's basically the more secure version of Ethereum, which is secured by the Bitcoin miners. More than 50% of them are also merge mining Rootstock. How did you come up with the idea, and what is the current state of the project?
So it goes back to 2013, where I was in San Jose conference, and I had created for my poker platform a smart Turing complete smart contract platform that was called Quickscoin. That was like 1 year before Ethereum. But I was very short-sighted, and my platform was only for gaming, right? I didn't think about the financial applications. I just focused on my thesis and gaming. So I created the platform. I asked people to collaborate, and everyone was focused on Bitcoin. I say, okay. But I didn't want to create an altcoin. I was even at that time, I was maximalist. Like, I had all the whole platform working, and I didn't want to launch it as an altcoin. So I waited for sidechain technology to be developed. But a year later, Ethereum came, and Vitalik and Ethereum Foundation contacted me to do the first security and design audits of Ethereum. So I was able to be very close to the initial designs. I remember collaborating in some of the ideas. Like I think that some of the concept of gas limit was suggested by me, and the idea of account abstraction was written fully in the original design documents, like something that it needs to be added to Ethereum at that point in time. I found vulnerabilities in the ET hash. ET hash proof of work function was based on a protocol that I designed. It was called run memo hash and was taken by Ethereum. So I was involved, but I was still a Bitcoin maximalist. So I said, okay, now that I have learned all about this, I want to bring this to Bitcoin. And so people told me, why are you bringing the EVM? Like this was when I decided that the technology was ready to be brought into Bitcoin as a sidechain. People told me, essentially Bitcoiners, and told us, because we were a group working on this, not myself only, right? Told us, why do you want to bring this foreign EVM into Bitcoin? Like, it has a lot of problems. It has security vulnerabilities, like reentrancy problems. And why don't you use a domain-specific language that can be proven? And my answer was, the VM is not important. Like, you can emulate any VM from any other VM. So what you need is developers to be engaged, and they will find a way to improve it, to build on top of it. Like, all the VMs at the end are almost the same, right? They just perform the instructions you want. So if there is a potential vulnerability, we will fix it. And in fact, the original Rootstock had additional opcodes to prevent certain vulnerabilities. For instance, it had an opcode which was called simply send, which was able to send bitcoins or smart bitcoins, what we called them at the time, without executing any logic to prevent reentrancy attacks. But when we also had an opcode which was called upgrade something, that allowed you to upgrade contracts without these tricks that you have to do now with self-destruct, or a lot of things you have to do now. It's very problematic and has caused a lot of losses in vulnerabilities in Ethereum. But at the end, like after some time, we realized that being incompatible was not the way, because we just needed everyone in Ethereum and to come and use Rootstock. So we dropped the uncompatible opcodes. Even if we thought, okay, this is better, it was better to wait until the ecosystem mature than to have innovation on the opcode level. But we did have a lot of innovation on the data structures. Like, if you take a look at how the state is organized in Ethereum and in Rootstock, it's very different. Like, in Rootstock, it's a binary tree. And it's a binary tree that is super efficient. Like, an account can take approximately 12 bytes on a node on a tree, while in Ethereum it takes almost 200 bytes. Like, it's much more efficient. And also you can create inclusion proofs and stateless client much easy. So we did a lot of things to improve the inner workings of the EVM. But on the other side, it's super compatible. Like you have the Web3 RPC layer, which is compatible. You have all the opcodes, and we try to be always, at least the opcodes and the improvements that Ethereum does that we feel that they are important or that are useful, we bring them. But we are still Bitcoiners, and the native currency on Rootstock is Bitcoin, and will always be Bitcoin.
Yeah, and something else that's very interesting is that you launched the first ever Bitcoin sidechain. And it was shortly after Blockstream published their paper on how to do sidechains, which they didn't follow through with their implementation of Liquid. And you used a different trust model, which uses HSMs, if I'm not mistaken. Can you talk a little bit about why you decided to do a sidechain and how the security works?
Yeah, everyone was very excited with the Blockstream sidechain paper based on SPV proof, but it had some problems. Like the first one was that any kind of sidechain needed to be UTXO based. Like basically it was kind of a clone of Bitcoin. You could obviously do different things, but essentially Bitcoin would understand a single type of sidechain, right? With certain blocks and all. That was super limiting in the amount of innovation that you could do. But they bumped into a much harder problem, which was a theoretical problem. Maybe they didn't know when they started the project, but it was a theoretical limit which says that basically you cannot do trustless bridging unless either you have a synchrony assumption, which means that both chains are synchronized. Let's say you have a rollup or you have a sync chain or something, or there is a rational requirement, like you have some collateral or some crypto economic incentive. That is when you create a bridge with collateral in certain other token, which is something obviously I don't appreciate as a big Bitcoin thing, having another token as collateral. I don't like that. And the other assumption that you can make is that you have a honest majority. Like, let's say like 51% of the miners are honest, or 51% of the sidechain miners are honest, or both. And then you manage to create a decentralized bridge. And this, I think that when Blockstream researchers realized that this was a theoretical result, they felt, I guess, frustrated, and they abandoned the project. But Alexei Samyatin, who was here these days and talked with us a lot about his projects, he published the paper with all the proof that this is the case. So if you have to make some assumptions to create a real decentralized bridge, then let's try to find the more realistic, practical, pragmatic, secure assumptions that you can make. And obviously, the idea of having a federation and multi-sig is attractive because if it is really distributed and really there is a difference in jurisdictions and geographical distribution and all, then you get more. It's more secure. Obviously, if it is fake, then you get nothing, right? But like the Nomad bridge, like it was all the keys held by the single person, right? But if it's really decentralized, you are better. And the next step. That was, I think it was suggested by me, not by me, but by Juliano Rizzo, which is was the co-founder with me of CoinSpect, the security auditing company. He says he was much more involved in cybersecurity than me at that time. He says there is no way you can store a private key in a server. Like, it's gonna be stolen. You need to use HSMs. So we implemented HSMs. The first release, they just kept the private keys protected, but they still obey the computer that was connected to the HSMs. Like if we call them pegnatories, right? The ones that are holding one of these HSM devices, the PO HSMs. So the pegnatory software would tell, okay, sign this, sign that, and the HSM would just blindly sign it. So that was just the first step to isolate the private key. But now we need something better. We need to run a SPV node of Rootstock inside the HSM, so that the only way to convince the device to sign something is to bring it a lot of hash rate, a cumulative hash rate. That means that the command comes probably or with highly probability from the best chain. So we did that. It took us like 4 months to launch the first release, and then we improve it. We are constantly, the core developers and the community are constantly improving the HSMs. But I think that at this point I'm confident we have reached a point of high security. So even if all the pegnatories collude, like everyone is malicious and they want to extract the private keys, they can't. They need to. I mean, the command to withdraw funds needs to come from a blockchain that has, at this point, 36 hours of full Bitcoin hash rate, if I'm not mistaken. So, if you think that how hard it is to revert one Bitcoin block, well, you have to think about. I think it's more than would be like more than 200 blocks of Bitcoin to really cheat one of these devices. But bad things happen, so we keep improving, we keep proposing new things, and the thing we were discussing these days about BitBM, and that's super promising, and I hope that we could migrate Rootstock to BitBM. I'm at this point, I'm every day working on BitBM, trying to improve it, trying to make it more efficient, trying to do less of pre-signing, that it creates a lot of pre-signing. So I think it's super promising. Maybe we could just have like two at the beginning, maybe two different ways of controlling the funds, one with a BitBM bridge and the other with a standard, with our own proof of work HSMs. And then when we are super confident that this is the right path to go, then maybe we can drop the HSMs. But of course, it's the community decision. So my research now is to propose the best possible alternate bridge using BitBM.
Satochip provides open source solutions based on smart card to assist you in your crypto journey. The hardware wallet lets you safely store your private keys within the tamper-proof chip memory, while Sato Dime allows you to create a barrier cold storage in 2 clicks thanks to its mobile app. And SeedKeeper is the ultimate hardware device to store and manage your seed phrases. Become self-custody with Satochip. Your keys, your coins.
In regards to what you said about this being the community's decision, I feel sometimes that Bitcoin has a culture problem, as it's being pitched as digital gold and nothing more, when in fact it can do pretty much everything with side chains, with second layers. There is so much that you can do in terms of financial applications or even non-financial applications with Bitcoin, but people don't use it because on one hand, they have this hodl culture that they should only hold their Bitcoin and not use it for anything else. And there's also this culture of toxic maximalism, which says that everything that does not follow the orthodoxy of a few use cases is degenerate or evil and should not be tried. And Rootstock has been around for 6 years now, or 7.
Well, it was launched in 2018. I mean, we started in 2016, but launched in 2018, so it will be like 5 years, right? So your question was about the culture. So when I wanted to implement opcodes in Bitcoin, I think I have a couple of proposals there, not beeps, but just forum posts trying to see if there was a possibility. The first drive chain proposal, I did the first drive chain proposal after reading TruthCoin article. I did implement the first drive chain and created the first drive chain beep. So I wanted Bitcoin to have more capabilities. But very soon I realized that it was not the way, that Bitcoin works unless at that point, like, you have to show a real use case. You don't push things into Bitcoin because you liked it. There must be a real use case that is overwhelming important for Bitcoin. And I said that the only way to do this is to show the world that there is a use case that is worth it. And that use case is financial inclusion. And I came to realize this when we met the group that we co-founded Rootstock, Diego Gutierrez Aldivar and Gaku, Gabriel Kurman, and Adrian Eidelman and Ruben. And so I learned about financial inclusion, the problems of the unbanked. And I said, and I said, okay, this is Bitcoin was meant to solve this problem too. And so, okay, store of value, that's fantastic, but we need to, to put this technology on the hands of the unbanked. And so the only way to do that was through Rootstock and smart contracts. And we very initially realized that stablecoins, collateralized with Bitcoin, would be the most decentralized way to allow people to join the cryptocurrency ecosystem. Because poor people really, first, they don't have wealth to save. They just need for small amounts, and generally it's used in payments. So the only way for them to enter this ecosystem is through stablecoins. So maybe after they feel confident about the technology, they can buy Bitcoin. But the entrance is stablecoins. So I think that it was very important to have a decentralized stablecoin on Rootstock, and Money on Chain was the first to bring it, and it's been doing great. And then there are some others now, like USD Riff, and there is a sovereign dollar. So you have competing dollar pegs, and all of them collateralized. So it's a advancement.
I spoke with someone yesterday, and I'm not gonna give the name because it was a private conversation, but I can reveal the statement. What he said was that sidechains are obsolete and they're going to be replaced by rollups. Do you have any opinion on that?
Rollups are very interesting because you have this synchrony assumption that you can make, like rollup blocks are interleaved in Bitcoin blocks, but since Bitcoin does not work as a settlement layer for rollups, like it's only a data availability layer for rollups, then you have not solved the bridge problem. So it's like you have the same problem. You have to build a bridge. And what technology are you going to use to build a bridge? You are going to take Rootstock technology because it's ready open source based on publicly available HSM devices that cost $100. So this is the technology you're going to take if you want to go to market fast. Why are you going to create a new bridge? Or you find BitVM and you manage to do that with BitVM, then obviously that would be the best, probably. But until we are sure that we can do this securely with BitVM, then you still need a bridge. Even if you are a rollup, you still need a bridge. And the other problem of rollups is that you are using Bitcoin as a data availability layer. That means that transactions are going to be expensive. And Rootstock transactions cost less than cents generally. So it's really useful for financial inclusion. And rollups will not, because the block space cost will go up. I mean, everyone expects that as Bitcoin price appreciates. So rollups will be expensive. You will have more. And the other thing is that rollups cannot have a higher block rate than 10 minutes unless you do some other consensus algorithm like leader election or something. And most of the DeFi use cases require 30 seconds or less. Like Rootstock has a average blocks interval between 15 and 30 seconds, which miners can tune. They can kind of select which block interval between those limits. Currently, it's 30 seconds. But more than that, then it's not very well suited for payments. And the advantages of having fast on-chain payments is very important. Also, if you are going to create a payment channel network on top of Rootstock or the Lightning Network on top of Rootstock. Because one of the problems I see with the Lightning Network is that if a payment fails, there's no follower system. So you have to wait. I know if you have to open a channel or something, you have to wait 10 minutes. But let's say that you have a Lightning Network in Rootstock connected with the Lightning Network in Bitcoin, exchanging Bitcoins like smoothly. And then, okay, if you cannot make the payment go through, then you just make it online, you pay a little more, and it's all transparent. You don't even realize that happened on the, under the hood. So there are many, many benefits of having a high block rate. And one of the things that I was working before BitBM came, but I'm still writing. It's one of the problems of merge mining, which is what Rootstock does, is there is a potential risk of mining extractable value or maximum extractable value, as it calls today, which is, if mining, let's say mining sidechain nodes requires more hardware or requires more processing or solving more difficult problems, then that could influence miners to centralize, right? And this is a problem. So one of the solutions that is a post-torque solution is BIP 301, which proposes blind merge mining as a mean that any miner can participate in earning from sidechains, not securing, but just having a revenue from sidechains without even running in a sidechain node, which I think is super powerful. But there are two problems with this BIP. One is that it only works for blockchains with 10-minute block interval because it uses Bitcoin as the auctioning mechanism. So the bid and the settlement of the bid, everything, it's 10 minutes on average. So and in Rootstock we don't have that. So we want to have our own blind merge mining system. And I have two proposals. One is internal to Rootstock, but I don't want to solve the problem for Rootstock. I wanted to solve it from any sidechain. So this new idea that I'm writing it's called the BitChain, which is basically a very, very lightweight sidechain that will be the kind of the backbone for all sidechains to connect. So it will be very fast blocks, but it will have limitation on the UTXO set size, and the blockchain will be pruned on consensus. Like everything will be made so that this sidechain can only have one purpose, which is provide the bidding mechanism for all the sidechains. Well, currently there's only one sidechain, but I really think the merge mine sidechain ecosystem could grow, and I expect other sidechains to come. I don't know if it's going to be 1 year, 2 years, or 10 years, but I hope that also Rootstock sets a precedent that this is useful.
Hello Bitcoin Takeover listeners, this is Victor from IVPN. We could have produced the flashy ad with lofty claims, but we like the straightforward approach, so I'll just stick to the basics here. How are we different from other VPN providers? IVPN is run by Bitcoiners. We've been accepting Bitcoin since before the block size wars, now using BTC Pay server, and also accept Lightning payments. We also aim for radical transparency supported by open source software, regular audits, and a transparent team. And finally, there's absolutely no KYC with IVPN. We don't ask for an email or any other personal information when you sign up. If you would like to test our service, send an email to trial@ivpn.net to receive a 30-day IVPN Pro voucher.
Hello, I'm Vlad, and I have been a user of IVPN Pro for longer than 1 year. What I like the most about it is being able to use 7 devices at the same time and using the multi-hop feature to connect to 2 different servers of my choosing at the same time. Also, your account consists of a randomly generated string of letters and numbers which are not linked to your email address, bank account, or real-life identity. You top it up with a Lightning payment and you get instant confirmation at low fees. Definitely get your 30-day IVPN Pro trial by sending an email to trial@ivpn.net. Make sure you use a burner email address that you probably already have for trolling. I think we only have time for one more question, according to the schedule. So I have to ask you this. How can the regular user get started with Rootstock today? What can they install? What can they run on phones or computers? And also, where can people keep up with your work and follow what you're doing?
Okay, so as I work in the research area, I really don't care about the many wallets that support Rootstock. There are many. But I would say I would go to the Rootstock website, which is a site that is maintained by IOB Labs. contributing to the Rootstock ecosystem. There you will have a list of wallets, list of tools that you can use. There is an explorer. There is a stats website that tells you about the network. There is a website that tells you about the state of the pegnatories and where you can see the attestation of each one of the pegnatories, which is a message that is signed by the device that makes sure that the device is running the exact firmware version. So a lot of information that you can get from the Rootstock IO, starting from the Rootstock IO website. And there is a discourse channel that you can check. I don't remember the exact address, but you can start from the Rootstock IO. And the second question was, how can you follow me? Or I have a Twitter handle, which is sdlerner. I plan to move to Nostr sometime, but I haven't tried yet, so it's one of my pending stuff. And I have a blog, which I'm not kind of using much more, but you can find all the information about Satoshi pattern, which is called bitslog.com. And all the articles I write about Rootstock are generally in Medium, because it's so easy to read there. So, okay. So thank you very much, Vlad. It was a pleasure to talk and to meet you in person, because you came long trip here.
I very much appreciate your time. It wasn't easy to get you because you're always busy. But I appreciate that you came here and you gave me 1 hour of your time. And now I have to run, catch my flight. So thank you. And don't forget to subscribe and follow Sergio.
Okay. How was it?
Excellent.
Ooh, battery low.
Yeah, it's a nice.